On May 27 and 28, 1905, in the Tsushima Strait between Korea and Japan, two fleets met in a battle that reshaped naval warfare. Its meaning still matters because it showed how speed, training, and industrial power could decide an empire's fate. The battle came from a wider struggle over influence in East Asia, where Russia and Japan had collided over Korea and Manchuria. By 1905, diplomacy had failed, and both sides believed control of the sea would shape the peace. Russia sent its Baltic Fleet on an extraordinary voyage around half the world after earlier setbacks in the war. Japan, already fighting close to home, prepared to intercept it with a fleet that was smaller but better positioned. The Russian fleet carried the burden of distance, coal shortages, and exhausted crews who had spent months at sea. Japan's sailors faced their own strain, but they trained for coordinated gunnery and faster maneuvering. The Russian commander, Admiral Zinovy Rozhestvensky, carried responsibility for a fleet many doubted could survive the journey. Across the water, Admiral Togo Heihachiro faced pressure to protect Japan and end the war decisively. Behind the admirals were crews, mechanics, signalmen, and gunners who depended on coal, shells, charts, and discipline. Morale mattered as much as machinery because a fleet far from home could feel the weight of every delay. The Russian fleet had to cross dangerous waters while trying to preserve formation and coal. Every mile increased fatigue, while rumors, repairs, and uncertainty made the voyage feel heavier than the sea itself. By late May, the fleets converged near the Tsushima Strait, a narrow passage between Korea and Japan. The geography mattered. Currents, visibility, and limited room to maneuver could turn a sea lane into a trap. The weather added uncertainty, with haze, changing light, and the smoke of coal-fired engines blurring the horizon. In naval combat, seeing first and shooting accurately could matter as much as armor. Japan's plan was to find, shadow, and concentrate fire on the Russian fleet before it could escape or regroup. Russia hoped to push through the strait, preserve its ships, and reach safety in the north. The opening phase began with sighting reports, signal flags, and cautious turns as the fleets closed distance. Small advantages in position and timing quickly became critical, because both sides knew the first exchange could shape everything that followed. Japanese ships moved to cross the Russian line, a maneuver designed to bring more guns to bear at once. The Russian formation tried to respond, but its long voyage had already reduced flexibility. As the range closed, the battle became a test of gunnery, coordination, and nerve. Shell splashes rose around the ships, while visibility shifted constantly with smoke, wind, and movement. The Russian flagship and nearby vessels came under intense pressure as Japanese fire concentrated on key targets. Damage spread through command and control, making it harder to keep the fleet organized under stress. A critical pressure point emerged when Japanese fire and maneuver began to break the Russian line's coherence. Once formation weakened, individual ships had to survive alone in a battle that rewarded unity. The Japanese advantage was not a single blow, but a sustained pattern of pressure. Better speed, better fire control, and tighter coordination allowed them to keep choosing the terms of the fight. For the Russians, every damaged ship made the route forward more difficult. Some vessels tried to stay in motion, but the fleet's center of gravity shifted as command signals became harder to read. As afternoon gave way to evening, the battle's decisive movement took shape in the widening gap between the fleets. Japan had forced the Russians into a defensive struggle while maintaining the initiative. Night brought confusion, navigation challenges, and the danger of losing what little cohesion remained. In the dark waters of the strait, damaged ships struggled to find direction amid smoke and scattered signals. The collapse came through a combination of damage, fatigue, and isolation. Some Russian ships were forced to surrender or were abandoned after becoming unable to continue, while others tried to escape through the darkness. By the next day, Japanese forces were still hunting survivors and scattered vessels. The scale of the defeat became clear not only in ships lost, but in the collapse of a long, expensive expedition. The immediate aftermath was less about spectacle than exhaustion and accounting. Crews faced capture, rescue, or the long uncertainty of what remained afloat after the fighting ended. In Japan, the victory became a symbol of national confidence and modern naval power. In Russia, the loss deepened crisis and helped weaken faith in the imperial system already under strain. The battle changed military thinking far beyond East Asia. Navies around the world studied Tsushima for lessons about long-range gunnery, fleet concentration, scouting, and the importance of communication. It also influenced how states judged industrial capacity and sea power. Tsushima suggested that modern war rewarded preparation, training, and the ability to sustain operations over great distances. Historians still debate how much of the outcome came from Japanese planning versus Russian exhaustion and structural weakness. Most agree the battle was shaped by many factors rather than one simple cause. Some accounts emphasize technology, especially faster firing and better fire control. Others stress command decisions, training, and the strategic disadvantage of sending a fleet on such a punishing voyage. There is also debate about how much weather and visibility affected the opening exchanges. Even with careful reconstruction, the battle remains partly a story of uncertainty, seen through smoke and distance. For Japan, the victory was real, but not effortless. For Russia, the defeat was severe, but came after extraordinary logistical strain. Careful history keeps both truths in view. Today, the Tsushima Strait is a working maritime corridor, not a battlefield frozen in time. Ferries, fishing boats, and commercial traffic move through waters once crowded with warships. The landscape still carries the memory of that encounter through its narrow channels and open approaches. Standing on the shore, it is easy to see why commanders cared so much about distance, visibility, and timing. The battle is remembered not because it was the largest naval fight of all time, but because it was so consequential. It helped define the age of steel fleets and the global reach of modern war. Its legacy also lives in the caution it offers about overconfidence and underestimation. A fleet can be brave, but bravery alone cannot replace preparation, coordination, and endurance. Tsushima remains a case study in how geography can shape history. A narrow strait, a few hours of visibility, and the choices of commanders altered the balance of power. For the people who lived through it, the battle was not abstraction, but a day of smoke, signals, and irreversible decisions. For later generations, it became a lesson written across the sea. More than a century later, the Strait of Tsushima still invites reflection on power, vulnerability, and the cost of war at sea. The water is quiet now, but history lingers in the currents.